Corin Vale was carrying a bucket of turnip peels to the goats when something breathed in the dark end of his barn. He stopped with one boot sunk in the cold mud by the threshold and listened, because a poor man learned to listen before he spent effort on fear. The goats heard it too. They had been shoving one another at the gate, indignant at the delay of breakfast, but now they stood stiff and silent, ears lifted. Bramble, the mule, stamped once in his stall. Beneath the warm smells of hay, dung, old leather, and damp boards came another smell, sharp as a knife laid on the tongue. Blood. Corin looked at the peels in his bucket, then at the pitchfork leaning by the door. "Right," he muttered. "Naturally." He set the bucket down, took the pitchfork, and walked toward the stack of barley straw he had meant to move for 3 weeks. Ashlow Farm had 2 stony barley fields, a strip of turnips, 6 goats, 30 hens, 1 mule with opinions, and a barn that leaned slightly east as if listening for better weather. Corin had inherited it because everyone else with sense had left or died. He was 31, widowed 5 years, alone by habit now rather than tragedy, and not a man anyone would call remarkable unless they were remarking on his ability to mend the same fence badly in every season. The shape behind the straw moved. At first his mind made armor of it, not a person. Dark plate, wet cloak, one enormous boot, a hand clenched around a broken arrow shaft. Then a face lifted, green-grey in the thin line of dawn coming through the wall slats, and 2 gold eyes opened under black hair tangled with hay. Orc, woman, wounded, very awake, despite the blood. Corin's pitchfork rose. Hers did not need to. Even collapsed against the straw, she looked as if the barn had accidentally sheltered a war. She was taller than any man he knew, broad-shouldered, scarred along the arms, with small tusks curving from her lower jaw and one pointed ear cut by an old notch. An arrow stood out of her left shoulder. A long gash had opened her thigh where leather armor had split, and a darker patch under her ribs soaked through the shirt beneath the bent side of her breastplate. Her hand moved toward a knife at her belt. "Don't," Corin said, which seemed a thin word to offer a creature built like a siege engine. "You'll pull something important loose." Her lips drew back from her teeth. "Human." "Farmer," he replied, "since we're naming obvious things." She tried to rise. Pain struck her so hard her eyes emptied for a moment, but her fingers still found the knife hilt. Corin should have run. Sensible men ran from armed orcs in barns, especially armed orcs who had already been shot by someone else. But he saw the blood running down her shoulder, steady and dark, and practicality arrived before courage could embarrass itself. A wounded person needed cloth, water, warmth, and pressure. A dangerous wounded person needed all that with a greater respect for fingers. "I have bandages," he said, "mostly old shirts. Clean, though, cleaner than straw." She stared at him, assessing the door, the loft ladder, the pitchfork, the sickle hanging on the wall. Even half dead, she read the barn like a battlefield. Corin lowered the pitchfork a little. "If you kill me, try not to do it on the good hay. There isn't much of it." Confusion flickered across her face. Then her eyes rolled back, and her body slumped. "That is not agreement," he told her, and knelt anyway. Removing her armor was like taking apart a collapsed gate while the gate objected. The plates were buckled in hidden places, the straps stiff with blood and rain, the metal cold enough to numb his fingertips. Corin had mended plows, delivered goat kids, and once freed Hazel's head from a bucket handle while she screamed as if he had invented buckets personally. But none of that helped him understand orc armor. He cut 2 straps with his belt knife, apologizing under his breath to workmanship too fine for his barn, and shifted the breastplate enough to reach the wound near her ribs. She woke with terrifying speed. One moment he was bending over the strap. The next her hand clamped around his wrist hard enough to grind bone, and the other went for his throat. Her eyes were open, but not fully seeing him. "Ambush!" she snarled. "Barn!" he gasped. "Goats, mule, me, that's the army." Her fingers tightened. He could feel how easily she could break him. He held still because stillness seemed the only brave act available to a man with no bravery prepared. "I'm trying to keep you alive," he said. "Not heroically. I'd like that clear. You're bleeding and I have cloth, and those things have an order." Her gaze sharpened. She looked at the rafters, the straw, his face, the pitchfork out of reach. Slowly, grudgingly, her grip loosened. Corin drew his hand back and found purple marks already blooming on his wrist. "Thank you," he said, because fear did strange things to manners. "Touch my blade," she whispered, "and lose your hand." "Hadn't planned to. Mine mostly cuts turnips and occasionally me." She held his stare another heartbeat, then sank back, jaw clenched. He brought boiled water, linen, his small bottle of spirits, and Maribel's sewing kit from the cottage. Seeing his dead wife's blue thread still looped through the needle hurt in a quiet, ordinary way, and then the orc woman made a rough sound, so memory had to wait its turn. The arrow came free ugly. She did not scream, but she hissed a word in a language he did not know, and Bramble kicked his stall door as if offended by it. "Fair," Corin said, pressing cloth to the wound. "That sounded fair." Cleaning the thigh took longer. There was dirt in it, bits of wool, one small splinter of wood. The rib wound was narrow, but deep enough that each breath had to negotiate with pain. She cursed him in 3 languages while he worked, and when he stitched the thigh, her hand closed around a post until the old wood creaked. Corin decided not to mention that the post was one of the stronger things on the farm. By the time he finished, dawn had climbed pale over the fields. The goats were furious again, and his own shirt clung cold to his back. He wrapped her in his spare blankets, shoved hay around her enough that a casual eye would see only storage, and went to feed the animals before they began a revolution. He did not go to the village. That decision became larger the longer he carried it. There were authorities in Dunmere, men with badges and swords and tidy rules about borders. They would ask what side she belonged to before asking whether she needed water. They would see armor before wounds. They would smell reward or danger, which on men often looked the same. Corin had no argument fit for a courtroom. He had only a barn, bandages, and the knowledge that the woman on his floor was alive because he had not yet handed her to people who might prefer her useful. At noon he brought broth made from barley, onion, and the last of a hen too old to lay and too slow to escape destiny. She was awake when he entered, propped badly against a bale, one hand under the blanket where he suspected a hidden blade waited. Her gaze went from him to the bowl. "Poison?" she asked. Her comment was precise, each word set down like a stone. "Old chicken," he said. Some would call that similar. She looked at him, then at the steam. "You hid me." "Covered you. Hid suggests planning." "Why?" "You were cold." "That is insufficient." "Most true things are." She took the bowl after smelling it, then ate with grim efficiency. Every barley grain gone, every onion scrap scraped clean. He liked that more than he should have. "Can you walk?" he asked. Her eyes narrowed. "Why?" "Because if you can, you may want the privy before dignity becomes another wound." For the first time she looked away. "Not far. That's what I thought." He brought the old ash crutch he had used when Bramble stepped on his foot 3 summers back. It was absurdly too short for her. She examined it as if it were a diplomatic insult. "Human carpentry apologizes," Corin said. "I can stand. I believe you. Belief and wanting you to fall on me are different matters." She made a low sound that might have been pain or amusement. With his forearm under her hand and the crutch ignored on principle, she stood. Her weight came down carefully, yet Corin's knees still reconsidered their loyalty. She was taller than him, even bent with injury, smelling of iron, rain, leather oil, and hay. Outside, frost smoked along the yard. She paused at the threshold, scanning the road, the ditch, the barley fields, the cottage, every possible approach. Warrior first, he thought. Whatever else she was, she had learned to count exits before breaths. "You live alone?" she said. "Yes." "Why?" "The goats refuse to move out." Her gaze sharpened. "That is evasion. A reliable one." He helped her back before her face could go any greyer. That evening, after porridge thick with goat milk and salt, she asked his name. "Corin Vale," he said. "This farm is Ashlow. It is poor. You wake in a man's barn and insult his square footage. I observe. Observe quieter. The hens are sensitive." Her mouth almost moved. Not a smile. The memory of one. "Name?" he asked. "You need one. I can keep calling you you, but it will make us sound married and disappointed." A pause. Too small for many people, but Corin had spent years hearing the difference between goats chewing cud and goats chewing rope. "Mara," she said. "Mara." He repeated. "Fine. You accept this? It's shorter than Wounded Orc Woman in my barn. You do not ask clan, rank, allegiance. Would any of those make you bleed less?" The question struck somewhere she had not armored. "No." "Then I'll save them for when they're useful." She leaned back, pain tightening her mouth. "Among my people, aid makes a cord between hands." "Around here it mostly makes dirty bowls." "You mock sacred things." "No, just things I don't understand." She studied him, suspicious in a way that seemed tired rather than cruel. "You do not ask payment? From someone who arrived unconscious?" "Most would. Most have better business sense." He took the empty bowl. "Rest. Don't undo the stitches. If you die, I'll have wasted my best thread. Your stitches are uneven." "So is the man who sewed them." That almost smile came again, stayed half a breath, and vanished. The next days settled into a strange rhythm. Corin fed goats, milked goats, patched fence, checked the road, brought water, changed bandages, and pretended not to notice how often Mara listened for hoofbeats before birdsong. She refused to explain who hunted her. He refused to press in any way that mattered. "Can you walk?" he asked each morning. "Farther than yesterday," she would say, even when it was a lie wearing boots. She ate everything he brought without praise and without complaint. Rye bread, goat cheese, turnip stew, oatcakes burned on one side. The first time she did not smell the bowl before eating. Corin noticed, and looked away so she would not have to see him noticing. She, in turn, studied the farm as if it were a puzzle set before a council. The way he saved bent nails in a jar. The way he scattered ash near the henhouse door to catch fox prints. The way broken buckets became feed scoops if one side held. "You keep useless things," she said while he sorted cracked harness rings by lantern light. "Almost useful things." He corrected. "On Ashlow, that's different." She turned a bent hinge in her large hand. Her fingers were calloused across the palm in a sword grip pattern, nothing like the blunt farm scars on his own. "In my father's hall, broken things are removed before visitors see them. In my father's barn, broken things became hooks. Your father was practical. My father was poor. It looks the same from a distance." She returned the hinge. "There is dignity in making use." "Careful," he said. That sounded like flattery. It was assessment. "Better. I know where I stand with assessment." On the third morning, she found the broken fence before he did. Corin entered with a milk pail and found her braced in the barn doorway, wrapped in his old brown blanket, glaring at the yard. "No," he said. "You have not heard my request. Your posture asked it. The small white-eared goat is behind the woodpile eating rope." "Hazel," Corin sighed. "Of course she is." He went out with a peg and hammer. Mara followed, despite being told not to, because being told not to seemed to strengthen her will, like good rain strengthened weeds. "I can hold a rail," she said. "You can barely hold yourself upright. The rail is weaker." "That isn't the argument you think it is." Yet when Hazel shoved through the gap again, and Corin needed a third hand, Mara crouched with controlled slowness and held the lower rail while he set the peg. Sweat appeared along her temple. Her jaw locked. Corin drove the peg in quickly. "There," he said. "Heroic conquest of the fence." She tried to stand and failed halfway. He caught her elbow. For an instant her weight leaned into him, heavy, warm, disciplined even in weakness. He saw a small scar at her eyebrow, the darker ring around her golden iris, the exhaustion she would rather bite through than admit. "You are foolish," he said softly. "You are slow." She replied, "Both can be true." She did not pull away at once. Then Hazel bleated around a stolen bit of rope, and the moment broke. Later, when he found 2 stitches spotting red, he scolded her while changing the bandage. "Among my people," she said, "thanks are not spent on every small task. Gratitude has weight. It must be placed correctly. Around here we say thank you for passing salt. Your people are careless with sacred things. You should see how we treat taxes." She looked at him, startled, and laughed. It was short, rough, and painful enough that she pressed a hand to her ribs, but it opened her face like fire seen through a fortress window. Corin sat very still with the bandage in hand. "Do not look so astonished," she said. "I have heard jokes. Better ones. Most things are better than your jokes." "Likely." He tied the linen and looked down before his expression betrayed how much he wanted to hear that sound again. Danger came on the 5th day. Hoofbeats, 5 horses, iron-shod and too steady for farmers. Mara heard them before Corin heard anything at all. Her face changed so completely that he understood the difference between wary and hunted. "How many?" he whispered. 5, armed." She reached for the knife beneath the blanket. "Do not fight," he said. "You cannot. If they enter, I kill one. And the other 4? Then I improvise. Terrible plan." He opened the old lambing hollow behind the hay rack, a narrow space his father had built during a winter when the ewes kept dropping early. "In?" She looked at it. "I cannot fit." "You will if you hate them enough." That worked. He helped her into the space with as little touching as possible and as much as necessary, then dragged hay down until she disappeared behind straw and shadow. Her hand caught his sleeve through the gap. "Do not be brave for me." "I don't know how," he said. "I only know how to be busy." He had a bucket in his hand when the riders came into the yard, which made him look either innocent or underprepared. 5 men in road-stained cloaks stopped near the well. Their horses were too good. Their boots were too clean under the mud. The leader had pale eyes and the polished politeness of a knife kept for guests. "You own this land?" he asked. "Own is generous." Corin said, "The land and I have an arrangement." The man looked over the sagging fence, the hens, bramble showing yellow teeth from the barn. "We seek a fugitive, an orc woman, large, wounded, dangerous." Corin let his face become as blank as poverty had trained it to be. "Orc? You would remember." "I remember most things that bleed on me." The leader's gaze sharpened. Corin realized too late what he had said, and sloshed goat milk over his boot. "Goats," he added. "Births, not orcs." "May we search the barn?" Corin's heart hit his ribs with both fists. "You can. Mind the mule. He bites loved ones and strangers alike." "Before I continue, I'd like to make an announcement. I'll be sharing some really steamy, uncensored orc stories on my Patreon page that I couldn't post on YouTube. You can find the details in the description. Warning, the content is really steamy." The leader and a scarred man dismounted. Corin walked ahead because if he walked behind, they might see his knees failing negotiations. Inside, the barn smelled too much like barn, and, to Corin's terrified imagination, too much like hidden princess, though he did not yet know the word. The leader inspected stalls, loft, feed sacks, the hay. Hazel took advantage of the scarred man's cloak and began eating the edge. Filthy beast, the man snapped. Particular about fabric? Corin said. The leader paused by a stain in the boards Corin had scrubbed until his fingers ached. What happened here? Goat birth. A goat? Twins. One backward. It was a morning. This much blood. Corin looked him dead in the face, helped by the fact that terror sometimes resembled stupidity. You ever pulled a goat wrong end first? The scarred man grimaced. The leader looked at the hay rack, at Corin, at the mule, at the leaking roof. Perhaps men hunting royal prey could not imagine it hiding in a barn where a farmer discussed goat obstetrics and smelled of milk. Suspicion slid off the smallness of Ashlow Farm and found no place grand enough to land. If she comes, the leader said, send word to the magistrate in Dunmere. There is payment. For a wounded woman? For information. Right. Corin scratched his jaw. How much for Hazel's opinion on wool? The scarred man stepped forward. The leader lifted a hand, turned, and left. Corin stood in the yard until the hoofbeats faded. Then he returned to the barn, shut the door, and leaned his forehead against it. His hands shook so hard the bucket rattled. That, he said, was bad. The hay shifted. Mara emerged pale with pain, knife in hand. You lied poorly. Thank you. They believed you. That has been the foundation of my life. She stared at him as if seeing a weapon where she had expected a stick. You were afraid? Completely. You did not give me to them. No. Why? Because they said fugitive before wounded, because they had good horses and bad eyes, because you asked me not to be brave and I took offense. Her gaze flicked to his bruised wrist, then to his face. Corin. It was the first time she used his name. In her mouth it sounded forged. He looked away because it struck too clean. Don't turn it into a debt, he said. I didn't do it for that. You do not understand debt. I understand owing. Millers, seedmen, neighbours with long memories. Those accounts. Debt is not a chain unless dishonour makes it one. Debt is a road. One walks until the weight reaches its proper place. He looked at the hay still clinging to her hair, the knife in her hand, the place where she had hidden and listened to him shake. And where is the proper place for being stuffed under hay while I lie about goats? She was quiet for a long time. I do not know yet. The riders changed the barn. Before them, danger had been a story somewhere beyond the hills. After, it had hoofprints by the well. Mara told him a little more that night, while rain tapped on the roof, and Corin put bowls under the leaks. She had been travelling with a small escort to meet someone in secret. The escort was dead. Some of the attackers were human. Some were orc. Betrayal, she said, did not keep to one language. You were trying to stop a war? Corin guessed. She did not answer. Silence, properly held, could be kinder than questions, so he did not press. Instead, he asked about the dark bone bead she held while sitting beside the main post. My mother's mother, she said. A finger bone, carved after burning. She rode in 3 campaigns, killed a river chief who took her sister hostage, and hated pears. Corin blinked. You carry your grandmother. An ancestor travels with one who may die away from home. She pressed the bead to her forehead, then to the barn floor. I tell her where I am. And where is that? In a leaking barn, eating goat cheese made by a man who apologizes to hinges. That was private. She values useful fools. Then I'm honored. The rain softened. Mara's palm rested on the old post, the one his father had set, and his mother had measured children against, and Corin had leaned on the day Maribel died, because he could not bear the cottage. This place has held hunger, she said. Cold, birth, death, work. It has not been praised. It leaks. Most things that shelter life do. He had no answer. She looked at the post as if it were carved stone in a hall. You make ordinary things difficult, he said. You make difficult things ordinary. Their eyes met in the lantern light. He wanted absurdly to cover her hand with his where it touched the post. Not because it would heal her, or answer danger, or make his poor life larger, because her fingers looked cold. He did not move. She did not either. The drip in the corner counted time for them. On the 7th day, Nettie Crow came up the track with onion rolls and dangerous curiosity. Nettie was 70, small, white-haired, and able to notice a missing button at 50 paces. "Hide," Corin said into the barn. Mara, who had been practicing walking without the crutch and pretending not to be proud, glanced toward the track. One old woman who knows me. Mara vanished behind the hay with gratifying speed. Nettie entered the yard, already scolding. "Corin Vale, don't stand there like a wet fence post. You looked half dead at market." "That's my winter face. It's every face. Take these rolls." He took the basket, and warm onion bread nearly made him confess from gratitude alone. Nettie peered toward the barn. "You bought extra salt from Besser. Smoke's been up late. What are you feeding out here?" Corin's mind went blank except for the word goats, which arrived too proudly. Goats. Goats don't take salt boiled in broth. Hazel's poorly. Hazel ate my apron last spring and looked proud after. Don't lie to a woman who saw you bare-bottomed in a washtub. "I've been hungry," he said at last. True enough. Nettie's sharpness softened in the way he dreaded. "Corin, don't. I said nothing. Your eyebrows did." She sighed and patted his cheek. "Your Maribel would scold you for thinning." The name landed gently and hurt anyway. She scolded with artistry. That she did. Nettie looked over the poor yard, the tired fields, the roof he had never fixed properly. World sees a man alone on bad land and thinks there's nothing to take. Be careful. There are worse thieves than hunger. He thought of the riders. "I know." Her eyes narrowed, but Hazel chose that moment to seize the basket cloth in her teeth, and the interrogation dissolved into battle. When Nettie left, Mara stepped out. "She loves you." "Nettie loves by siege. She sees you as harmless. Most do. You dislike it." He watched the old woman's shape shrink down the lane. Harmless men get left alone. Mostly. They also get overlooked. Being seen isn't always profitable. Mara was quiet. In halls, every gaze has a price. Loyalty, threat, hunger, hope. No one looks without wanting to move a piece on the board. Sounds exhausting. It is leadership. Same thing from the sound of it. Her mouth tilted faintly. "You brought food because I was hungry." "Yes." "You hid me because those men would hurt me." "Yes." "You do not perform it." "Mara, I perform badly enough when lying about goats. I wouldn't risk mercy in front of an audience." She looked toward the barn. "That is why I chose it." "Chose what?" "Your barn. From the ridge I saw 3 roofs, one rich enough for soldiers to search first, one with too many fires, this one poor, tired, and unlikely. I thought an unimportant man might remain himself when no one watched." The words should have insulted him. Somehow they did not. They struck deeper than insult, where a small life kept its secret pride. "Well," he said, staring at the mud on his boots, "I've been called worse by people who knew me better." "I did not mean lesser." "No, I think that's why it hurt less." That evening she told him her true name. They were in the barn doorway, dawn gone cold to dusk, goats chewing with the solemnity of priests. "My name is Kavara," she said. The mash bucket tilted in Corin's hand, and a wet lump landed on his boot. "Kavara. Yes." The name fit her better than Mara ever had, heavy at the front, sharp near the end. "Is that one real?" He asked. "It is my true name. Why tell me?" She looked out over the barley stubble. "Among my people, names have edges. A child name is for kin. A war name is for enemies. A title is for halls. A true name is given to one you permit to call you across distance, anger, even death if the ancestors listen." Corin stood very still. "That seems like more than I should be trusted with." Trust is not given because the receiver is prepared. It is given because withholding it has become false. The goats ruined the solemnity by trying to climb into the trough, and for once Corin was grateful. "Kavara," he said again, carefully. Her eyes closed for one breath. When they opened, they were bright. "You say it as if it is breakable. Is it? Everything is. Then I'll be careful." The revelation came the next night, not from her mouth, but from a torn seam. Corin was mending her dark cloak by lantern while she slept in the lambing hollow. Fever finally gone, but strength not fully returned. His needle struck something hard inside the inner hem. He frowned, worked the hidden pocket open, and drew out an oilskin packet. The seal on the letter inside had cracked but remained visible. A black crown over crossed tusks and 3 mountain peaks. Corin knew it the way border folk knew storm signs and tax marks. The Bloodstone Throne, the ruling house of the northern Orc clans. He read only fragments before guilt made him stop. Princess Kavara Ashtharn, emergency parley, proof of Lord Vare's correspondence, if I do not return. The word princess sat absurdly beside the leaking roof, the milk stool, the bucket catching rainwater, the patched blanket she had used. His first feeling was not awe. It was a hot, stupid embarrassment, as if he had spoken too loudly in a temple without knowing he had entered one. His second was irritation at the embarrassment. His third was fear, not of her, but of the size of the world hidden in his hay. "You found it," Kavara said. He looked up. She was awake, watching him, not reaching for a blade. That mattered. "I was mending the cloak." "I know. I didn't mean to read. You read enough." He set the packet down. Standing felt too formal. Sitting felt too casual. So he did both badly, half risen from the stool. "Kavara Ashtharn," he said, "daughter of the Bloodstone line, granddaughter of Queen Merach, daughter of High Chieftain Tharnok, war leader of the Eastern Pass, third in blood, first in command by challenge right." She laid the titles out like tools. Useful, sharp, not decorative. Corin rubbed a hand over his face. "Right. That is your response?" "I'm sorting through several. Most are unhelpful." "Say one." "Does your shoulder hurt worse now that I know?" She stared. Something fragile passed over her face. "No." "Then I'm not sure what I'm meant to do with it." Most would bow. "We're in a barn, low beams." "Corin. Also, if I start bowing now, it will feel like I was rude for a week. I don't have energy for backlogged etiquette." This time she laughed, but it broke halfway into something quieter. "You are offended." He looked at the seal. "A little." "Because I lied. Because I feel foolish. You were not. I called a princess stubborn for fixing my fence. I was stubborn. I told you your stitches were ugly." "They are." He let out a breath. "You let me think the danger was smaller. If you had known, you might have handed me to the magistrate. No, you cannot know that. I know the man standing here." The answer surprised him. It seemed to surprise her more. He leaned against the workbench, suddenly tired. "I might have panicked louder, said stupider things, and I've set a high mark. But I wouldn't have given you to those men." Kavara looked down at her hands. "I did not tell you because I wanted one place where I was not the sum of my titles." There it was, not a plea. A truth placed between them with both hands. "In every hall," she said, "men see treaty, threat, bloodline, alliance, inheritance. My enemies see a prize. My allies see a banner. Even those who love me see the throne's shadow first." She lifted her eyes. "In your barn, I was a wounded woman who needed soup. I wanted that to last." Corin's anger went out like a lamp, lowered to save oil. He looked around the barn. The scarred post, the straw, the place where her blood had stained wood despite his scrubbing. "I don't care that you're a princess," he said, then winced. "No, that's not true. I care the way a man cares when he learns the stray cat in his barn is actually a lion with a kingdom. I am not a cat." No, cats rest more. Her mouth almost smiled. He took a step closer, stopping well beyond reach. I mean, I don't want different things from you because of it. What do you want? The question was too direct. A ruler's question, cutting through cloth to count coins beneath. Corin could have said he wanted his barn back, his quiet back, his life small enough to hold again. None of that was false. But the truth stood waiting, plain and inconvenient. I want you to heal. I want the men hunting you to fail. I want you to leave because you choose to, not because you're driven. And I want to know whether, when you go back to being all those titles, any part of this place stays real. Kavara's face changed. Struck, not softened. The question had crossed from poor farmer to princess, and found the same hidden place in both of them. The fear that being seen was temporary. She stood carefully and came close enough that he had to tilt his head back. Among my people, she said, a thing witnessed without performance cannot be unwitnessed. Does that mean yes? It means this barn exists in me now, and you with it, inconveniently. He had no clever answer. Fortunately, Hazel knocked over a bucket. Kavara closed her eyes as if asking the dead for patience. Your army is restless. My army is terrible, yet it holds the field. Knowing her title changed the shape of the danger, but not the rhythm of the farm. He did not bow. She did not ask him to. He called her Kavara because that was what she had given him, and when he nearly said princess once, pain crossed her face so quickly that he never tried again. She told him more while he oiled harness, and she sharpened his poor vegetable knife with open disgust. Lord Vere of Dunmere had been selling troop movements to her uncle's faction, hoping to provoke border raids and force a marriage alliance she had refused. Her secret mission had been to carry proof to loyal chiefs and a human magistrate not yet bought. Someone in her court had betrayed the route. Her escort had died in the ravine and at the bridge. Family sounds tiring among royalty, Corin said. Among farmers. Mostly dead in my case, so quiet but not cheerful. She accepted bleak humor with a nod. My uncle believes leadership is owning obedience. My mother believed leadership is owing protection. And you? A leader eats last unless poison is suspected. Then she eats first. Corin laughed. That's grim. That is rule. Does rule comfort? She considered. No. So he handed her a harness strap to hold while he threaded a buckle, and together they repaired something that would not matter to courts, and mattered entirely to tomorrow. Her strength returned by visible inches. She could cross the yard without leaning, carry a half bucket of water, clear old straw from a stall with one arm, and glare at any wound that dared remind her of limits. Stillness, he learned, was almost pain to her. A leader who cannot work beside those who labor has no right to command, she told him after he caught her sorting turnips by the cottage wall. Good thing no one here is commanding anyone. That is not what I mean. I know. He let her sort the turnips because the task was safe and because her pride needed somewhere to stand. She held up a split one. Animal feed? Yes. Small. Soup. This one resembles your tax collector. Corin leaned over, unkind to the turnip. She smiled, and the sight made him forget the shovel in his hands. Later she asked about Maribel, his wife, not with the hunger of gossip, but with the caution of someone requesting entry. She is in the comb on the sill, Kavara said, the shawl by the stove. The way you do not sit in the chair nearest to the hearth, I ask so noticing is not theft. That undid him more than pity would have. So he told her. Maribel with red hair and fierce opinions, Maribel singing badly while kneading bread, Maribel wanting bees because she said he had a poor understanding of miracles, Maribel dying in 6 fever days while spring opened outside as if nothing had happened. After, Corin said, I thought grief would become useful if I worked hard enough. Like manure. Rot it down, spread it thin, grow something. Some things don't feed the field, They just stay. Kavara's hands were still over the turnips. Among my people, a widow cuts a strip from the marriage cloak and ties it inside the roof, so love does not wander hungry. That's beautiful. It is practical. Hungry love becomes a ghost. He looked at the cottage. Maybe I should have tied something. You kept the shawl, the hand-nose ritual before the mouth names it. He laughed softly because it was too close to comfort. You speak like that and expect me to believe you're only a war leader. War leaders may think. I've heard rumors. Humans believe orcs only rage. Humans believe goats are simple. Humans are often wrong. She looked at him, and what passed between them then was not desire alone, though desire was there, quiet and startling. It was recognition. Two people shaped by duties no one else had seen clearly. On the 12th day he went to market because absence would become suspicious, and Ashlow needed salt, lamp oil, and nails. Kavara disliked the plan. Take my small blade. No, it is balanced. I have a knife. Your knife is for vegetables. And men, if they are patient. Her look could have cut rope. At the gate she said, I will be here when you return. The stiffness of the words made him understand she was promising not to vanish while he was gone. Good, he said. The goats would miss judging you. In Dunmer, posters had appeared near the magistrate's hall. The drawing showed tusks, accusation, and almost nothing of Kavara. Reward. Dangerous. Armed. Men at the blacksmith spoke of patrols, of orc treachery, of Lord Vere increasing guards for everyone's safety. Besser the baker sold Corin day-old loaves and leaned close. Reward like that could save a farm like yours. He thought of the roof, seed, debts, maybe even bees. Kindness had a cost when a man could count the coins against it. Haven't seen her, he said. On the road home, hoofprints near the ditch tightened his stomach. He drove Bramble faster while the mule resented urgency with his whole body. The barn stood quiet. Too quiet. Kavara. No answer. He entered with his knife drawn, which would have been more impressive if the knife had not recently cut turnips. A hand caught the back of his coat from above and yanked him sideways. He made a sound no dignified man would claim. Kavara dropped from the loft ladder behind him, moving far too well for someone recently stitched. You are dead, she said. Am I? He wheezed. If I intended harm. I would have died confused, which is how I live. You did not check the loft. You were not supposed to climb to the loft. I heard horses earlier, too. They watched from the lower road. Fair turned to anger, because it needed somewhere to go. You could have fallen. I did not. That is luck wearing boots. Do not scold me like livestock. Then stop behaving like Hazel with a blade. Her mouth opened, then closed. Then she laughed fully, one hand to her ribs, and Corin stood helpless before the sound. When she recovered, he set the market sack down. There are posters. A reward. How much? He told her. She looked at the roof, the patched walls, the cart outside. Enough to mend this. Likely. Enough to change your life. It would still be my life, just drier. You thought of it. Yes. Her eyes lifted sharply. The money, he said. Not giving you up. Roof, seed, debts, bees. Bees? Maribel wanted them. He shrugged, uncomfortable. Seemed worth admitting. And? He met her gaze. And here you are. Something in her expression held still with effort. Many swear loyalty when it profits them and call it honor. Few admit temptation and choose anyway. Don't make me grand. I'm not built for it. I am not making you grand. I am making a record. The next evening she entered the cottage for supper. She stopped at the threshold, taking in the small room. Scrubbed table, stove, hanging pans, herbs drying from the beam, Maribel's shawl by the hearth. It's only a kitchen, Corin said. A home is never only. She sat sideways because her knees did not fit under the table. They ate bread, goat cheese, pickled turnips, and the last onion roll. She inspected the turnips. They are sour. Yes. On purpose? Mostly. Her eyes accused him, though she ate them. Afterward she stood before the shawl. May I? He nodded. She touched the edge with 2 fingers. Soft. She hated scratchy wool. Sensible. She would have liked you, he said before thinking. Kavara's fingers stilled. Why? You would have argued with her. She liked people who could hold a line. Would she dislike that I am here? He sat with both hands around his mug. Maribel once brought home a fox kit because it had a thorn in its paw. It bit me, peed in the flour, and stole half a sausage before she admitted it preferred the wild. I am not a fox. You and cats both. Missing the point. No, she wouldn't dislike that you're here. She would dislike that you bled on good linen. Kavara's mouth softened. Then I will try to bleed less. She'd appreciate the effort. The barn drew them back after supper, as if the place itself kept asking for witness. He watched her sharpen his knife properly, slow strokes of stone over metal. Your grip is wrong, she said. It cuts vegetables. It could cut better vegetables. When she handed it back, the edge shone. He tested it on a shaving of wood and blinked. You've improved my turnip's future. Your enemies also. My enemies are weather and debt. I will speak to both. I'd pay to see you threaten Rain. She looked toward the dark slit of the door. Rain listens badly. Silence settled, then deepened. Corin put the knife down. When will you go? Soon. No drama. That made it worse. You can travel? Fast enough. That means no. It means I have survived worse. You say that like comfort. It comforts me. He accepted that because he had no right not to. Will you come back? There, plain bear, more frightening than riders. Kavara did not look away. I do not know what shape my life will have after I reach loyal hands. War may come. My uncle may move openly. Ver may accuse first. The council may command what I refuse. I may have to cut through my own blood. That wasn't yes. No. Wasn't no either. No. He nodded. I don't want to be another duty. You are not. And I don't want you to promise because you owe me. Her eyes flashed. Do not insult me. A promise made from false debt is rot. Good. Good. Yes. He rubbed his thumb along the knife handle. I don't know how to want something from you without it sounding like asking. Kavara stared at him. In my life, wanting is usually demand-wearing perfume, duty-wearing a crown, or hunger-wearing law. You want and do not reach. It is difficult. You've said that before. It remains true. She set the whetstone aside and held out her hand, palm up. Corin looked at it as if she had offered him a kingdom, which she had not and somehow had. He placed his hand in hers. Her fingers closed gently. Not fear's grip, not command, but choice. His breath left him. Among my people, she said quietly. Hands are not taken lightly outside kin or command. Should I let go? No. Then I won't. They sat with hands joined while bramble shifted, and the goats breathed in their sleep. No kiss came. The hand was enough, and almost too much. Corin felt the roughness of her palm, the heat beneath scars, the care it took for such strength to hold without claiming. Kavara's thumb moved once across his knuckles, answering a thought he had not spoken. The morning she left was cold and grey, full of animal impatience. Corin woke before the rooster, though the rooster took credit anyway. Kavara waited in the barn in cleaned armor, the patched cloak over her shoulders, knives at her belt, wounds bound tight beneath leather. The patch he had sewn into the cloak was crooked. She had kept it. He handed her bread, cheese, dried apples, 2 onion rolls saved from Nettie, and a small crock of honey he had bought years ago and never opened because sweetness was easy to save until it hardened. This is too much, she said. Road food. The honey? For ancestors with poor taste. Or wounds, or eating, I don't know the rules. Honey is for honoured guests and the dead. Then try to be the first one. Her eyes lifted. I will attempt it. He helped her fasten the breastplate where her shoulder would not yet cooperate. The armour was cold and heavy, smelling of oil and iron. When the last buckle was done, she looked terrifying again, and also like the woman who had argued over pickled turnips at his table. There, he said. You look ready to frighten weather. Your roof still needs repair. So you keep saying. She did not go to the road. Of course she did not. Instead, she turned to the main post of the barn, the one scarred by rope, weather, and her grip from the first morning. From her belt she drew a narrow strip of red leather, dark as dried berries, stamped with tiny marks. She removed the bone bead of her grandmother and pressed it to the leather. Corin Vale of Ashlow, she said. His chest tightened at the formal sound. That sounds serious. It is. Should I stand differently? Stand as you are. Kindest command I've heard. The softness in her eyes nearly broke the solemnity. Then she faced the post, the barn, the poor farm waking around them, and her voice deepened until each common word seemed carried by an older language underneath. Before bone remembered and hearth unseen, before the dead who carried my name and the living who will answer it, I mark this roof as witness. I came beneath it with no banner raised. I was given water without price, food without bargain, bloodcloth without chain, silence without purchase. No hand here bent knee to my crown, and no hand here was made servant by mercy. Corin stared. Even Hazel stopped chewing. Kavara wrapped the red leather around the post once. By the red hearth promise of the bloodstone line, I bind my remembering to this place. Let no blade of my house be raised against Ashlow while my blood has heat. Let no hunger come to this door that my storehouses would not answer. Let no insult name this man lesser for the poverty of his roof, for this roof held a daughter of kings when kings could not. If he calls my true name in need, across road, river, war, or winter, I will hear as kin hear. If I live, I return. If I fall, my oath walks after me, and my people will know where my debt chose to kneel. She took his right hand and set it against the leather on the post, covering it with her own. The post was cold. Her palm was warm. This I speak as Kavara Ashtharn, not before court, not for treaty, not by command given to me, but by choosing. Let the ancestors break my sleep if I lie. The barn held utterly still. Corin could not have spoken if the roof had caught fire. Kavara released his hand, leaving the strip bright against old wood. What? He managed, and lost the rest of language. She watched him with a nervousness so well hidden he would have missed it 2 weeks ago. It is a promise. I gathered that. Not repayment. Repayment counts what was given and tries to level the scale. The Red Hearth promise refuses the scale. It binds protection, return, and witness. It says the giver did not make a servant, and the receiver will not make a transaction. Among my people, it is offered when someone outside blood becomes chosen shelter. Chosen shelter. His voice was rough. A place one may return without armor of the spirit. You've given this before? Never. The word was quiet and complete. To anyone? No. He looked at the leather, then at her. And your people will know what it means? Yes. What will they think? Her mouth curved, fierce and almost amused. Some will be offended, some afraid. My grandmother will be unbearable. He laughed, but it broke in the middle. I don't know what to say. That is why I told you before leaving. If you spoke easily, I would suspect you misunderstood. I do misunderstand. Not the important part. She stepped close. The armor made her broader, harder, but her eyes were bare. 3 moons, she said. If roads remain open, and I am not taken by war council or blade, I will come by the north field before the 3rd moon wanes. If I cannot, I will send the black feather mark with someone who knows my hand. If I am dead, a rider of my house will bring you my bead, and you may insult me in whatever afterlife your people use. We mostly hope for rest. Then insult me quietly. I'll try." Her hand rose and touched the side of his face. Her fingers were warm, rough against his morning stubble. Corin closed his eyes because not closing them seemed impossible. "You are not a small life," she said. He opened his eyes. She was close enough for him to see the fine lines at their corners, the healed split in her brow, the gold darkened by dawn. "It feels small from inside," he said. "So does a seed." He huffed a laugh. That was almost gentle. "Do not spread rumors. Your secret's safe, along with larger ones." For a moment he thought she might kiss him. For a moment he thought he might ask. Instead she leaned forward and touched her forehead to his. It was not a human kiss. It was firmer, more solemn, tusks careful near his mouth, breath mingling in the cold. It felt like oath, farewell, and recognition. When she drew back, his chest ached with the exact shape of where she had been. "Among my people," she said, voice rougher now. "That is given before battle to one whose name must be carried back. Should I do something? Remember, I can do that. I know." A dark mare waited by the back fence, saddled with gear Kavara had hidden so well Corin had no idea when she had prepared it. He walked with her through the yard. Frost broke under their boots. The barley field lay pale and tired, the fence still crooked despite all conquest. At the gate, she mounted stiffly but without help. The height suited her and did not. She looked down at him. "The old brown goat rules," she said. Corin blinked. "That's your farewell? It is intelligence. Use it well. I'll inform Nettle of her promotion. She already knows." He smiled, and this one did not break. Kavara. Her true name held her there for one more breath. "Corin, come back with fewer holes in you. Repair your roof before I return. That's a larger promise than yours. Lie better then." He laughed, and she smiled with morning behind her, fierce and real, and gone too soon. She turned the mare toward the north field. At the ash trees by the ditch, she looked back and raised one hand, palm outward, scar catching the thin sun. Corin lifted his own. Then she passed between the trees and was gone. The farm did not change because the heart did. That was the first cruelty and comfort of it. The goats still demanded feed. Hazel escaped before noon. Bramble refused the cart harness with artistic conviction. The roof still leaked over the north stall, and Corin still had more work than daylight and less coin than repair required. Yet every task felt touched at the edge by something he could not name without becoming foolish. When he poured mash, he heard her saying the old brown one was chief. When he mended the fence, he saw her hand driving the peg home. When he entered the barn at dusk, the space opened differently around him. It was still poor. It smelled of hay, animals, damp wood, and ordinary work. It still held broken things kept because almost useful was useful enough. But on the main post, above the faint mark her fingers had left in fear the first morning, the red strip of leather waited, bright in the lantern glow. Corin stood before it with the milk pail in his hand and did not touch it at first. Then, because there were no halls, no witnesses except goats, and no audience to make performance of it, he set his palm lightly beneath the promise. The wood was rough. The leather brushed his knuckles. Outside, last light lay across the barley stubble in thin gold lines, and inside the barn a single piece of red held fast among rope scars, nail holes, and dust. Corin breathed in hay, smoke, cold, and the faint iron memory of a life that had arrived wounded and left chosen, and after a while he said, very quietly, 3 moons, then, and went to feed the goats before they mistook romance for an excuse to riot.